And yet another act of political retribution. We have law lackey for Donald Trump, Lindsay Halligan, going to a grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia to obtain an indictment against New York Attorney General Letitia James. Now, let me be very clear. What they're doing here is they are targeting the truth tellers. And Tish James is the quintessential perfect example of that political retribution turned criminal prosecution just to satisfy personal animus from convicted felon Donald Trump. If there was ever someone who was in the pursuit of the truth, it would be New York Attorney General Tish James. As we know, she successfully pursued claims against Trump, his children, and Trump's businesses when it came to the perpetration of fraud. She obtained a verdict against all of those defendants, and there was a multi-million-dollar verdict that was entered against all of the defendants. Upon appeal, even though the amount of the verdict was somewhat overturned, the actual findings of the trial court judge that Trump, his sons, and the Trump businesses committed fraud was left unturned, meaning the appeals court sustained those findings of fraud. But as I said, Trump, his lackeys, and this bullshit administration have made political retribution and revenge the name of the game. But criminal prosecution should never be weaponized. It should never be used in gamesmanship. Criminal prosecution is the most serious thing that can be pursued against someone that you perceive to be an enemy. A political enemy also? What kind of horseshit is that? I want to play for you now the response that was provided by Attorney General Letitia James after the announcement of the return of an indictment against her. Take a listen.
This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system. He is forcing federal law enforcement agencies to do his bidding, all because I did my job as the New York State Attorney General. These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost. The president's actions are a grave violation of our constitutional order and have drawn sharp criticism from members of both parties. His decision to fire a United States attorney who refused to bring charges against me and replace them with someone who is blindly loyal not to the law, but to the president is antithetical to the bedrock principles of our country. This is the time for leaders on both sides of the aisle to speak out against this blatant perversion of our system of justice. I stand strongly behind my office's litigation against the Trump Organization. We conducted a 2-year investigation based on the facts and evidence, not politics. Judges have upheld the trial court's finding that Donald Trump, his company, and his 2 sons are liable for fraud. I'm a proud woman of faith, and I know that faith and fear cannot share the same space. And so today, I'm not fearful. I'm fearless. And as my faith teaches me, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. We will fight these baseless charges aggressively, and my office will continue to fiercely protect New Yorkers and their rights. And I will continue to do my job.
Fear and faith cannot share the same space. And today, New York Attorney General Letitia James is fearless. I too would be fearless if I knew that the truth and the facts and the evidence are on my side. I would also be fearless knowing that my criminal defense attorney is Abby Lowell. Let me be clear, Abby Lowell has stood against government overreach, in Republican and Democratic administrations. And he, Abby Lowell, is prepared for this day. He has been going toe to toe and sparring with the Trump DOJ for months. He has taken down Ed Martin, who initially was talking about the indictment and the criminal investigation of Letitia James. He's also taken down Bill Pulte, the guy who made the criminal referral to Pam Bondi into her DOJ about Letitia James. The dam broke when they indicted former FBI Director James Comey, yet another truth teller. And folks, I am here to say to you that it is time. It is time to stand against the gaslighting of Americans to think that this perversion of justice is the American way. It is about as far off from the American way as anything could possibly be. Let's take a look at the indictment. It comes back with 2 counts. And again, this is from the Eastern District of Virginia, Lindsay Halligan. Let's just focus on the facts because we know that the first count deals with bank fraud and the second count deals with kind of fraudulent statements or false statements that are made to a financial institution. But the devil's in the details and the devil's in the facts. So let's look at the indictment together because it's important to understand what the allegations are. Because there's been several discussions based upon the criminal referral by Bill Pulte to the Bondi DOJ that dealt with representations that this was going to be your, primary residence or not. But these allegations are different. So let's focus on them. Alrighty, let's pull it up. So according to the allegations in this EDVA indictment, Letitia James was the borrower of a Fannie Mae-backed mortgage loan for a property located in Norfolk, Virginia. Okay? And according to this indictment, Letitia James, on or about August 17th of 2020, as the sole borrower, purchased a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom property in Norfolk for approximately $137,000, financed with a mortgage loan of approximately $109,600 backed by Fannie Mae. Now, the loan had something called a second home rider, which required Letitia James as the sole borrower to occupy and use the property as her secondary residence. Let's hit stop right now. This is the reason why I wanted to walk through these allegations with you, because as we've noted in prior media reporting, the allegations from Pulte that dealt with Lisa Cook and Adam Schiff, etc., as well as Letitia James, was that there was some type of mortgage fraud that was perpetrated by these people. Why? Because they said they were going to use property as their primary residence, but they didn't. And they obtained favorable conditions for loans. Let's go back to the indictment in this case. The second home rider required Letitia James to use this property in Norfolk as her secondary residence. That second home rider also prohibited her from using that residence as a time-sharing property, or it prohibited her from entering into a, quote, shared ownership arrangement or agreement that required her to either rent the property or give another person control over the occupancy or the use of the property. Now, what's weird here, if we can stop, is that language in the indictment, as you can see on the screen right now, that's actually not in quotes. It's kind of weird because if I were the prosecutor or the lawyer and I was citing to an agreement and some type of controlling term, phrase, or provision of that agreement, I would want to quote it verbatim. I wouldn't want to do a summary of it. So let's keep that in mind as we move forward with this litigation. And then it says here, despite the representations that were required under the second home rider, this property in Norfolk was not occupied or used by Letitia James as her secondary residence and was instead used as a rental investment property being rented to a family of 3. The misrepresentation allowed her to obtain favorable loan terms not available for investment properties. And it walks through a certain amount of money in rate savings, seller credits, for a total, are you ready? Here's the total at issue. The total of, quote, ill-gotten gains by Letitia James was approximately $18,933. I shit you not. This is outrageous. And then the counts, again, bank fraud is count 1. Count 2 was false statements to a financial institution. And it's premised on those allegations you and I just walked through together. I mean, it's petty shit. It's really petty. And, look, if I'm Letitia James's lawyer, Abby Lowell, skilled criminal defense lawyer that he is, I'm obviously going to highlight a lot of the issues that are going to be existing in this defective indictment. And again, it doesn't stop Letitia James from filing the appropriate motions to dismiss for vindictive prosecution, selective prosecution. Here's another thing that's going to be supportive of that. MSNBC had reporting just this past Monday of the following, that the top federal prosecutor in Virginia who was looking into these charges, named Elizabeth Yusi, Y-U-S-I. She oversees major criminal prosecutions in the Norfolk office of the EDVA. According to this exclusive reporting by Carol Lenning, this prosecutor confided to her co-workers at the office that she saw no probable cause to believe that Letitia James engaged in any kind of mortgage fraud, and that she planned to present her conclusions to Lindsay Halligan. I'm going to make an assumption, folks, that she made this presentation to Lindsay Halligan, and Lindsay Halligan said, I don't give a shit. That's what I presume happened in this instance. I also want to remind you that you may have heard, and maybe have forgotten already because there's been so much going on, that Ed Martin, the guy who tried to be the U.S. attorney in D.C., failed because he could never get through the Senate confirmation process. And instead, we got Box of Wine, Jadine Pirro instead. Anyway, I'm going to remind you that Ed Martin, what did he do? He went and he did these bizarre photo op in front of the home of Letitia James. And this is according to a letter from Abby Lowell, dated August 18th, 2025, addressed to Ed Martin, the pardon attorney. And it's a scathing letter that really is a massive burn. But it does include a picture from one of Letitia James's neighbor's surveillance camera, right? Like a Ring camera, that Ed Martin went with the New York Post writer with a photographer to make sure that they took a picture with Ed Martin in a trench coat standing in front of Letitia James's home, quote, as if this was a visit to a tourist attraction. And you got to see this yourself. It's wild. And according to Lowell's letter, this additional evidence of your improper purpose and conduct can be seen in the entirety of the surveillance video, which shows you actually engaging with the Post photographer, positioning yourself for what you thought was an ideal shot. I mean, this is how sick in the head these people are that have now brought this indictment against Letitia James. Crimes require intent, the specific intent to violate the law. How in God's name can Lindsay Halligan prove that Letitia James had the criminal intent to violate not only the laws that involve bank fraud, but fraudulent statements made to financial institutions? This entire thing smacks of political retribution. Now, let's focus on the Eastern District of Virginia, because we've talked a lot about that office vis-a-vis James Comey and the indictment that was brought against him last week. But I'm going to remind you of some critical media reporting. The lawyer that used to have the job at the Eastern District of Virginia, Eric Siebert, well, what happened to him? He quit. As you will recall, he quit because he was getting pressure from Trump and the Trump administration to bring charges against not only James Comey, but Letitia James. According to this PBS article dated September 20th of 2025, Eric Siebert, who did a months-long mortgage fraud investigation into whom? New York Attorney General Letitia James, resigned under pressure on Friday the 20th because of the Trump administration. He confirmed his departure in an email to colleagues, and here's what ended up happening. We ended up getting Lindsay Halligan, dumb lawyer extraordinaire. Now, think about this. If you had a career prosecutor like Eric Siebert, who was investigating for months the possibility of fraud being perpetrated by Letitia James, and you had findings, just like in the James Comey scenario, that there was insufficient evidence to be able to bring the charges, why would you not defer to those career prosecutors who have no bone to pick with anyone and who truly have everything to lose if they disagree with a Bondi DOJ. Those people are the truth tellers. Remember I told you at the beginning of this video that they're targeting the truth tellers? Eric Siebert, the former U.S. attorney, who's a Trump appointee and career prosecutor, he was targeted for being a truth teller. And I will also direct your attention to that Truth Social post, which we now have learned was accidentally posted to Truth Social, according to reporting from the Wall Street Journal on October 8th. On September 20th, when Eric Siebert resigned from the Eastern District of Virginia U.S. Attorney's Office, Trump meant to send a private message, a DM, a direct message, to Pamela Jo Bondi, urging her to prosecute former FBI Director James Comey and other people like Tish James and Adam Schiff. He wrote in that Truth Social post, as you see, quote, "We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility." According to the Wall Street Journal's reporting, Trump believed that he had sent Pamela Jo that message in a private message, a private DM, because he addressed it to, quote, Pam. He was later surprised to learn that it was actually public. Bondi grew upset and called White House aides and Trump, who then agreed to send a second post, the public second one, praising Bondi as doing, quote, a great job. So, as suspected, we knew that it was a mistake that was posted by Trump on Truth Social. But you know what? Does it really make a difference if we now got to see what he has already publicly promised when he was running for office? Felon Trump promised that he would be the retribution president. He's now transcended retribution and now just achieved a full-on fucking revenge status. So the fact that he sent a private DM kind of makes you wonder, what's he sending privately that is not accidentally made public? I'm sure it's pretty choice and pretty bad. But this just goes to show that vindictive and selective prosecution motions to dismiss are not only incoming from Comey, as we heard from his defense attorney, Pat Fitzgerald, when he was arraigned on Wednesday, but we know that vindictive and selective prosecution motions will be incoming from Abby Lowell on behalf of Letitia James, and appropriately so. These cases serve to highlight the absolute perversion of justice that this Trump administration has done to the independence of our judicial system. I don't have to remind you of the Emile Bovee pressure on the Southern District of New York concerning the prosecution of New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Poof, that case is gone because Eric Adams is, quote, buddy-buddy with Donald Trump. Do I need to remind you about Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche doing his cozy hen visit with whom? Ghislaine Maxwell, who now is in a minimum security camp in another state when she should be in a high security, max security prison, right? And now we hear media reporting that Donald Trump will be talking to the DOJ about a possible pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell. And how can we forget the inability of the Bondi DOJ to be able to release the entirety of the Epstein files for purposes of transparency to the American people? I use the word perversion in every sense of the word. Donald Trump is a pervert. Donald Trump has perverted justice. And the through line, the common denominator throughout every scenario that is being handled by the Trump administration, from Pam Bondi to Tom Homan, the $50,000 cash in the Kava bag, to Kash Patel, to Todd Blanche, to Emile Bovee, to, Brendan Carr, the FCC chair. All of that, the through line and the common denominator is the corruption and the perversion of justice. It is incumbent upon us as Americans to stand tall and to speak up and speak out against what is happening right now. I am proud that at Democracy Defenders Fund, we have corralled and led the cause to have statements and letters that have been released from bipartisan judges and other leaders under Republican administrations as well, in support of the idea that the only thing that is happening so far is an abuse of power regime by convicted felon Donald Trump. We have an opportunity on Saturday, October 18th on No King's Day 2.0 to take to the streets and to register our protests and our anger and our opposition to what has happened to our dear and beloved country. It is not time to give up. It is time to fight back, because let me tell you something. All of this, the Comey prosecution and now the Tish James prosecution, will blow up in their faces. It will be the biggest pile of shit that they have stepped in a really long time. You combine that with the unconstitutional and illegal actions that are being taken by this administration, sending federalized troops and National Guard into our cities. This will be a chapter in history that, trust me, marks the beginning of the decline of the Trump regime. Of that, I am fully confident. I guess in some ways, they, as in the Republicans and Trump, had to experience the find out part for themselves. For us, and maybe people that have been blinded with their loyalty for Trump, maybe now they also see the impact of things like a multi-day government shutdown that's about to take away healthcare from millions. I appreciate the fact that you care just as much as me and that you continue to support this cause here at my channel to make sure that there is the truth that is delivered as to what is happening in our criminal justice system. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.